Welcome to ContainerDays 2022. This is the on-demand session 40-foot standard thinking, how containers complicate cloud-native transformations. My name is Felix Evert. I am partner manager at Container Solutions. Ludwig Wittgenstein famously quoted with, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world." He's neither the only nor the first one to realize that we only can understand what we have words for. Those words, however, shape how we understand things, and sometimes those words lead us down the wrong path. This session is divided into 3 parts. The first section, I introduce you to Tom and his team from Awesome Company. In the second part, we will take a deeper look at how metaphors work. The third part, I suggest one option to push the boundaries of your language and support the success of your transformation projects. I conclude with 3 thoughts. So, what is the problem with containers, you might ask? Well, the answer is simply the solution is too obvious. It focuses our attention on just one thing. But let's meet Tom and his team first. So Tom is an engineer. He's curious, tech-savvy, really enjoys problem solving. I'm sure you have colleagues just like Tom. His team is really excited about Kubernetes, about microservice, containers, and container platforms, all the cool new tech around cloud native. Of course, he studied some Newman's books and he has watched recordings from this rise. Most importantly, Tom and his tech leaders, they know that cloud technology is key for business success, to accelerate innovation, grow faster. So he takes the container platform and gets started. First, fast forward 6 to 12 months. Where do we stand? Manual Kubernetes clusters running, few containers in the cloud. But the business, the organization is nowhere near all the anticipated results. So, what happened? Well, first and foremost, Tom is an engineer. Engineers are trained to solve technical problems, and Tom is looking for technical solutions. His decision makers bought maybe too quickly into the idea of container transformation because the concept is so plausible. The cloud and containerization program, however, stalled because it was regarded as a purely technical change. And the technology team got trapped in the technical jargon of their field. Why it matters? Because technological change is a practice of technical aspects as much as a practice of language. The process of identifying needs, architecting solutions, implementing select products and services, they depend on technical expertise, but they are as much as communication and interaction between different people. We often take the adequacy of our language for granted and assume that however effective it is between a team, it is also effective between others. And that's not the truth, especially not if language and terms travel across the boundaries of fields of expertise. Our language manipulates us. And as funny as it sounds, the poetic imagination sparked by cloud computing terms, they can make or break the success of a transformation project. These are the Container Days, and we are in Hamburg, one of the largest container ports in Europe. So of course, we're going to look at containers. There are several ways to analyze the role of technology and context. The DevOps and SRE community, they are familiar with some of them, thanks to the emphasis on team culture and collaboration. On interpersonal communication has always been a key aspect of relevance for them. Sprint retrospectives, blameless postmortems, productive feedback, psychological safety, to name a few, they all have linguistic dimensions. Great platform teams know very well it's not just what we say to each other, but how we say it. I would go a step further and take a closer look at the particular term container to discuss how it inspires change, how it may lead to technology decisions, and sometimes how it blocks our view from other options. To achieve this, I will use a linguistic model you all know and maybe fear from your high school days, the metaphor. And you have guessed it by now, containers is a metaphor. It's a very strong one indeed. For most people, metaphors are a device of poetic imagination and rhetorical flourishing. It's typically seen as a matter of language alone. But this can't be further from the truth. Metaphor is pervasive in our everyday life and professional life as well. And it's in fact not just a matter of language. It's also a matter of thought and action. In other words, the metaphors we use to label technology influences how we think about it and how others understand what we want to achieve. I will give you an example and compare the profession of software development to medicine. Any surgeon can see and touch an incised wound. If the cut is deep enough, you can see the flesh below the skin, feel the blood rinsing through the fingers. It is a craft including tangible objects. If someone refers to the shin bone that was particularly injured by the cut, we have a very clear understanding what that person is talking about. And even you could easily locate the injury I just described at the unfortunate person's body. While you are listening, you may even have formed a mental image in your head how the injury looks like. Surgery is a tangible craft. That doesn't work with software development. Outside the small group of experts, software development is intangible. For lay people and business, for example, it is very different to understand those intangible things. So what we do is we create mental images about something we've never experienced with. Metaphors allowed us to do this. They connect aspects of our tangible experience with potentially intangible things. This is how we form mental images about things that we can't touch. And it's precisely the reason why metaphors are so effective in the cloud-native technology. How exactly this works is about attribution. Metaphors take one aspect of a source object and transfer the meaning to the target object. This information is limited, usually, and it's very selective. I give you an example. If I say, think about Richard the Lion King, well, you know, he wasn't really a king of lions. And he wasn't a person with fur everywhere and paws. However, the metaphor uses the understanding of lion is strong and powerful and effective hunter and takes these attributes to Richard the person, and you may envision him as a successful warrior. Another example we can take from the cloud computing world, that's Kubernetes. No lay person on this planet understands what Kubernetes is and how it works intuitively. Using the Greek word for helmsman or pilot, that does the trick. It is a metaphor. The metaphorical naming uses the pilot's authoritative ability to steer a vessel and transports that attribute to this piece of software. This is how we imagine Kubernetes works. The effect, I still can't understand. I can't explain how Kubernetes precisely works, but I can imagine that there is some piece of software working like a captain and steering the vessel of applications through the choppy waters of infrastructure. And hey, who wouldn't want somebody on the bridge who's steering? Highlighting individual attributes, taking that from the source object to the target object, that's precisely what happens very, very effectively with containers and the technology space. The reason is containers are a very familiar object. Some of them, every one of us has already seen one. We have images available about where they are, how they look, and we can imagine how they touch because we know how steel feels. And precisely this familiarity evokes a plethora of affirmative attributes that we can then transport. On the most obvious level, there are the physical attributes, and there are quite a few. So what can we say about containers? They have the ability to encapsulate different objects of different sizes and different shapes. Shipping containers have the ability to encapsulate objects firmly. They are super standardized 40-foot standard shipping containers. They are the global norm. That's how global trade has been organized. Shipping containers are very solid. Quote steel makes them durable and quite protective. And shipping containers, they are portable. Yeah, they can move large distances as well as between different modes of transportation, from land to sea and from sea to land. Containers evoke a plethora of positive attributes as soon as we talk about them. The ability to highlight and transfer those positive attributes makes it much easier for non-tech people outside the core area of expertise to get an understanding, or at least to form an understanding what this technology is about. To put it quite bluntly, the moment a software expert talks about containers, lay people, business decision makers, scrum masters, program managers, they see actual shipping containers in their mind. And they attribute and they transfer the attributes of the shipping containers to the piece of software as they create their own understanding of it. This attribution is not just limited to physical characteristics. Yeah, we can go deeper. Our metaphorical thinking, it's not just limited to those attributes, but objects often come in context. Source objects are context bound. If I say you fought like a lion, we imagine if I say this is a lion, you probably have a very specific lion in mind. You see one of the species Panthera leo, and you may have an image with a savanna background. Shipping containers are very, very context bound as well. So how? Those are different things. They are an icon of effective transportation. If we think about transportation, we often think about containers. They are invented and most commonly used in sea containers, and creating a very specific context of ships stacked with containers moving over the ocean. Because that association is so common, you find so many illustrations of technology containers with exactly such images. More so, shipping containers are icons of global trade. They really are as regarded as the context for global success. This slide shows an example from a German weekly that directly connects a business economic recovery with the fact that the port recovers its activity. To add more, just like a brick, containers have a prototypical cuboid shape. They create the image of a firm and impregnable structure that is solid and that you can build on. In Western economies that reward growth, stacked containers by now carry a very special evidence. Large number of containers stacked above each other, we usually indicate prosperity. And where small numbers of containers stacked, it indicates decline. Moving containers loaded or offloaded in container ports are icons of buzzing economic activities. This container ballet is commonly experienced as inspirational or motivational, especially by business people. So if business leaders and senior executives in any industry vertical sign off the implementation of a container platform, provide budget for containerization projects, it is not just a well-written specification document. It's also their imagination about the importance and the inspiring wealth that containers bring that allows them to put the signature. Those are the highlight sites of metaphors. Because containers are such a powerful metaphor, it really gets the attention of non-experts. But where's light, there's shadow. And the same happens with containers, and sometimes it blocks our view from seeing other important things. As much as metaphors highlight certain attributes, they then transfer to the target domain, they hide others. Attribution is a highly selective process, and it usually focuses on the most obvious attributes. In this case, it's often the most positive attributes of containers, but containers also have negative characteristics, and we rarely transport them into the meaning in metaphorical naming. Containers are in fact very, very heavy, and they are difficult to maneuver. It's difficult to get containers from one place to another if you haven't invested in the vast infrastructure needed for them. And the very fact that for decades, all our transportation systems are built around containers, it's often overlooked. That is how metaphors affect our decision making. They highlight positive attributes and often omit the less obvious ones. A powerful metaphor focuses our attention, and it invites us to connect and transfer attributes that we have available. They spark our imagination about how a particular container is connected with other things. And we start transferring the business success of shipping containers to software containers. We limit our language and perception. However, technology transformations, they are quite diverse. They're a complex thing to do with so many things to consider. So I invite you to take careful action to also diversify your language and expand the boundaries of what you talk about. We at Container Solutions, we use a concept we call Cloud Native Maturity Matrix. And the very idea is that we take all the different concepts and ideas that are wandering around in the field and put them into relation to each other. Doing so, we can capture the complexity that is inherent in technology change, but we also create structure to it. And by that, we invite a flurry of questions to surface that come as we look through it. We also highlight the fact that a particular object like containers, where we have a very specific understanding, or at least a firm understanding of what it is and have assumption about what they can do, we make sure that they have in place with a lot of other dimensions. Because technology is so dependent technology experts, we deliberately try to highlight other dimensions like organizational or strategy as well. Most importantly, a container, shipping container, as a software container, they are seen as objects that can be obtained. And many business leaders join the thinking that once they have their containers somewhere, everything's gonna move as quickly and as seamlessly as they're used to from shipping containers. It's some form of silver bullet thinking. Remember the pilot. Once you have the pilot on the bridge, everything's going to be fine. We want to deliberately challenge those assumptions. In a cloud native maturity matrix, we focus on value generating principles, not objects to be obtained. Something like continuous delivery, you have to argue what exactly this means, how this practice can be implemented, and what it means for a different team. We have to take deliberate effort to divert attention from objects to processes and principles. Along that line goes the idea of change is nothing fixed like a quote and steel object. Change is experience. It's as a process that goes along. That's why a maturity matrix allows us to tell the story of a journey along a line that goes step by step. Not just one object, not just one technology, and not just one meaning of something we may call containers guarantees success. Framing change as a journey activates an entirely different metaphorical field. And this again is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to discuss what we actually mean. To put this in a perspective, the Cloud Native Maturity Matrix allows us to map the linguistic territory across different dimensions of change. It allows us to see all the different aspects of such change. It questions what we know, what we think we know, and how all those things relate to each other. And it gives us a very clear understanding where we think we stand and how far away we need to go further. Putting this all together, what can we conclude from this? So first and foremost, metaphors influence the way we think about objects. And especially in the tech world, they reinforce a purely tech perspective. To make matters worse, those who are not familiar with technology tend to load those terms with their hidden expectations and assumptions about such objects. Very many people assign great power to container platforms simply because they experience or observe the power of containers somewhere else. And we should take deliberately effort to counter this temptation and broaden our field and sharpen our understanding about what we talk, what we think about. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the other sessions of the Container Days 2022.